I am with Louise Golbey, singer and songwriter from London. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Louise, I'm really excited to have you here because I love your music and you have a beautiful aura.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Never been told that before.
You see? So, how are you today though?
I'm alright, I'm okay. Yeah, London's quite tiring sometimes. I'm feeling quite tired, but I'm okay. How about you?
Good. I'm really happy to have you here tonight. So let's talk. And let's start with a little bit of a basic, just to get to know you a little bit better. You're from London?
Yeah.
So you're English, and you come from a family that is quite into music.
Yeah.
And did you always want to be a singer-songwriter?
I always wanted to be a performer. Yeah, as you said, like my family are quite musical. My mum sings and she did lots of amateur dramatics, so I ended up being on stage with her when I was about 7 years old.
Right.
And kind of got the performance bug or whatever it's called. Bug or buzz?
Yeah.
Either.
Either
when I was really little, and I used to do loads of dancing and singing, and my dad plays guitar, my uncle plays violin, so I was surrounded by music. So yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to perform. I was always a bit of a show off as a kid.
What kind of music were you listening when you were growing up?
Well actually, my brother, who's older than me, he's 5 years older than me, got me into hip hop when I was quite young. And I remember, I think the first album I saw was De La Soul from The Daisies on the front. And my mum used to play a lot of her old Motown songs, so records and stuff. So yeah, I think I just kind of got into soul and hip hop that way.
Nice. And this is how you created your music identity somehow?
Yeah, I think it must have filtered through. Like, I mean, I always thought I'd end up doing musical theatre, but because I was always listening to soul and R&B and hip hop, I guess when I started writing my own songs, that was where I went towards. Yeah.
Louise, your name is not super famous yet, but I have to say you've been playing and performing in amazing places, in places that are real dream come true for many artists. I'm going to mention some of them. Glastonbury, that if you live in the UK, it's the most important festival during the summer. And then you've been at Ronnie Scott's at the Jazz Cafe, my favourite venue, and at the Isle of Wight Festival. There's another great festival here in the UK. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. So tell me more about those kind of performances.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, they are dream come true, and I found like every year of my career, I feel like I've had one particular milestone performance or achievement, which is great, and it's so lovely, like kind of ticking off venues that you'd always want to perform. Glastonbury was actually through BBC Introducing, and they'd been playing a couple of my tracks on the radio stations and then invited me to play at Glastonbury, which was amazing. And then Ronnie Scott's and Jazz Cafe, I mean the first time I stepped on it, I've done those a few times now, and actually looking back, like the first time I played those venues was such a big moment for me. And yeah, Isle of Wight it's almost been running as long as Glastonbury, I think, so it's another big festival in the UK.
And just to give some names, I know this year Pharrell Williams is coming to the Isle of Wight. Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah. Just to give some
I wish
names.
I'd done it this year.
But you've been working or somehow also shared the stage with other huge names. I'm going to read them because they are, I mean, I know for sure Anthony David, we spoke about Omar, Mr. Hudson, Paloma Faith, Jessie J, Ed Sheeran, example, George Benson, so many of them. And how does it feel to be associated with incredible names in the music business?
It's great. I mean, I basically used to be on the same gig circuit as Paloma Faith and Jessie J and Ed Sheeran. So it's amazing seeing, because those artists, like, honestly were always so good and so talented and really deserve the success they're having. It's quite interesting actually, because Paloma Faith just recently won a Brit Award and her speech was so heartfelt, and it really spoke to me because she was saying, you know, this one's for the grafters, because I think people might think she just came from nowhere, but actually she was gigging for years and working hard and doing it all herself, so it's so nice to see artists like that doing well.
The same as Ed Sheeran, really.
Exactly. Ed Sheeran used to do gigs and gigs and gigs. That's how he got how good he is performing and everything. And then the other bigger names that you mentioned are actually support slots that I've had in recent years. So I supported George Benson, Roberta Flack, who else? What's on the list? Alexandra O'Neill.
Yes.
So yeah.
Incredible names.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to talk a little bit about Ed Sheeran because I know there's a little thing that you want to mention about it.
Oh yeah, he's actually an extra in one of my videos. So, because yeah, like I said, we used to be quite good friends actually through the gig circuit, yeah, basically I was shooting a music video in Camden Town, and I'd put a Facebook message out saying, anyone that's in Camden on Saturday, we're going to be outside the station, I need a crowd, you just have to be in it, we're just going to film at this time. And anyway, we were starting to film and I saw Ed walk past. I went, Ed, are you here for the video? And he went, no, but I've got a meeting in about an hour, how long is it going to take? And I went, yeah, not very long. He went, alright then, and him and his friend came and were in it. So it worked out really well. Yeah, there you go.
Super cool.
It is quite cool.
You also done something else that it's really important for, I can say, for the British music industry, and you have supported Mitch Winehouse, that is the dad of Amy Winehouse, for her foundation. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, I was asked to basically be the support slot again, opening for Mitch at a place called Floridita in Soho. It's a really nice venue. And yeah, it was for the Amy Winehouse Foundation, so it was a really, great event and meant a lot. And it was quite an honour to be there and meet him, and yeah, it was good.
Talking about London, and talking about Maida Vale Studios. Tell me more about them, because they're a very special place in London.
Absolutely.
For music, and I know it's a very special place for you.
Yeah, because Maida Vale and Abbey Road are both studios in London that have got so much history, and they're just magical. And Maida Vale also came through the BBC.
Right.
So I think it was after Glastonbury, and I got invited to record at Maida Vale, and it was another just, one of those emails, and I'm like, did I really just get that email? And we recorded 3 tracks, and I think a couple of them were played on the radio.
Right.
But they sound amazing because they're recorded they were acoustic, but I had backing vocals and stuff. And because each studio there has got a bit of a story, like who's recorded in this studio type thing. And we were in the one where Bing Crosby did his last recording. So I think it might have been the track, that Christmas song he did with David Bowie. It might have been that one. I don't know. But there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's talk now about your music, Louise. We've been talking a lot, but not yet
Sorry.
about your music. And your last project, that is actually your first real album, it's called Novel.
Yes.
Tell me more about it. How did you create it? What's the story behind it? And the title.
Okay, so yeah, I've released loads of EPs and singles and stuff in the past, but this is I'll show you actually, because I've got the artwork there.
Very nice.
And yeah, this is my first full album, so it's called Novel. It's kind of a few meanings.
Right.
Obviously, novel means new, and also it's a kind of reference to Family Guy as well, because I've been talking about doing a full album for a while, and there's quite a famous sketch in Family Guy when they're talking about Brian's novel, and Stu's like, he's still working on that novel, and basically throughout this period my boyfriend kept saying to me, are you still working on the album? And I was like, I've got an idea for a title. But also the main reason is because a novel is obviously the full works, it's my story, it's my story through music.
Nice.
So there you go, there's 3 reasons.
There you go. Still talking about your music, you have worked with an amazing producer, and it's a British producer called Amir Yakub. And just to give you the heads up, he is a Grammy Awards winner for producer for one of the songs for Rihanna. And he also worked with Neo. So we're talking about huge names in the music industry. How did you get that connection, and how was working with him?
I actually met him through Mr. Hudson.
Right.
Because Mr. Hudson used to have I used to know him through like the North London gigging scene as well, and did a couple of gigs with him as well. And Mr. Hudson had a studio that I just popped in and saw him, and Amir was working there, and he introduced us. And Amir went, actually, I've seen you perform at the Jazz Cafe. Actually, I think it was with Anthony David. Might have been that one. Anyway, Amir had heard of me and seen me perform, and said, I'd really like to work with you. So we've worked on a few tracks actually, but one in particular has made it onto the album. And he's just great to work with. We've got a really similar idea of like, what we listen to and what we want. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, nice. I want to talk about a concert, a particular one that you have done, because you opened for George Benson and at the Kenwood House picnic concert in front of 6,000 people.
Yeah, that's the biggest audience I've ever performed in front
How
of.
do you feel?
Very nerve-wracking. And it's at this amazing, so there's this big heath in North London. It's called Hampstead Heath, and there's this huge, I don't know if it's a manor house or a palace or something called Kenwood House. And every summer they have these big concerts, and they have this huge stage outside, and everyone brings a picnic. But it's obviously, because it's outside, the capacity is incredible. And it was a beautiful summer's day, and yeah, it was just great.
One of those magic moments.
Yeah. And George Benson, I mean, what a legend, and he still performs so well. You know, there's certain artists that obviously as they get older, they kind of, obviously not as energetic or as good anymore, and he's just so good, and his band as well.
Wow. And also, there's another thing about your history that I'm kind of curious about. Your music have been played on the best radio station in the UK. So BBC One, One Extra, Jazz FM, My Soul, Capital Extra. Do you still remember, Louise, the first time you heard your track on the national radio?
I definitely remember the first time it was played on Radio 1, because I'd had a few kind of online radio stations play stuff, and then a track of mine got played on One Extra, and then after all the Glastonbury stuff, I then, one of my tracks was played on Radio 1, and it was just like, wow, Radio 1. And I remember quite a few people that I hadn't told. I got texts and phone calls going, did I just hear you on Radio 1? And yeah, and just absolutely, like, the support from radio is so great. I'm really trying to get more with the album as well.
Well, that actually takes me to my final question to you. So what's next for you now?
Well, I'm hoping to do a few festivals.
Right.
I recently did a gig in Hamburg in Germany, and I'm hoping to do a couple of festivals out there and in London as well, just promoting the album more. And going to start writing again, because, you know, I want to keep being creative.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with everything.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you. Shout out to Empire Radio Magazine. Think global, not local.
Log on to EmpireRadioMagazine.com for the latest news in arts, culture, and entertainment. Empire Radio Magazine. Think global, not local.